Hello, and welcome to Around the Kitchen Table discussion series here at Millicent Rogers Museum. My name is Karen Chertok. I'm the Director of Education here at the museum, and I'd like to start by giving a land acknowledgement. At the Millicent Rogers Museum, we are located on ancestral lands of Tiwa-speaking people of Taos Pueblo. We strive to deepen our relationship with the Red Willow people through collaboration while acknowledging and honoring the complex history of the Red Willow people past, present, and future. We express gratitude to this land and to the Taos Pueblo elders and ancestors who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. Our guest curator, Michelle Lanteri, will be moderating this discussion. Michelle Lanteri, PhD, is a museum curator, programs facilitator, and arts writer who focuses on arts and cultures in relationship with the Southwest. She is committed to reciprocal and accountable collaborations through a local to global approach and active listening. Lanteri has served in curatorial positions since 2012 and is currently head curator of the museum at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center and a regular contributor to First American Art magazine. Michelle has previously worked with the Albuquerque Museum, the Millicent Rogers Museum, the Cal Sharp Historic Site, the Institute of American Indian Arts, and the New Mexico State University Museums, and thrives in community-based creative environments. Thank you for being here, Michelle. Would you like to introduce the guests and the topic? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. It's my honor to be here at the kitchen table with Anita Rodriguez and Shemai Rodriguez. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Today we're going to go through a topic that Anita and Shemai have put together a slideshow for. And they're going to be talking about family traditions in adobe building and also mud practices. A little about the exhibition. It's called New Mexico Artists Around the Kitchen Table. It runs here at the Millicent Rogers Museum in Taos through January 23rd. And I hope that if you're in the area, you'll be able to come to the museum and visit some of the artists' works. We have more than 20 people participating in this exhibition, and it includes paintings by Anita, and also you'll see photographs of Anita and Shemai working together in the adobe practices. Also want to give a special thanks to the National Endowment for the Arts for their support of this exhibition and these programs. Thank you so much for investing in New Mexican art. We appreciate it so much. It's my honor to introduce our speakers today. I'm going to go through and introduce through a couple of bios. So Anita Otilia Rodriguez from Taos was born to a table groaning with art, exotic recipes, and eccentric stories from far-flung cultures. Her father, who had a drugstore on Taos Plaza, came from a family whose New Mexican roots go back to 1698. The plaza, town, and surrounding villages were almost all adobe, a symphonically beautiful architecture and a landscape that inspires odd reverence and begs to be painted. Rodriguez grew up on the centuries-old plaza, a stage set for a colorful, tragic, and complicated historical drama. This exotic ambience drew Anglo intellectuals, writers, and painters, including her artist mother, to this colorful town. She walked into Rodriguez's drugstore. He made her a chocolate soda, a known aphrodisiac, and the resulting entirely improbable marriage breached racial, class, and cultural boundaries. As for building in New Mexico, women were traditionally builders. They are the carriers of a specific architectural technology called Enjarrado, passed on by oral tradition first by Pueblo women and then Hispanic women. Despite having kept 1,000 years of architecture standing as the maintenance experts and embellishers, these women were never mentioned by architectural historians. Rodriguez took a tape recorder and camera into the villages, collected the technology of Enjarrando, and published the first article about the Enjarradoras to appear in print in 1975. Rodriguez got a contractor's license and spent 25 years practicing Enjarrando as a professional adobe finisher. She was invited to Egypt by Hassan Fathi, author of Architecture for the Poor, where she added to her repertoire of skills from a culture that has used adobe for 6,000 years. She also traveled to Guatemala, China, and all over the American Southwest, collecting adobe tips. At the age of 47, Rodriguez retired her contractor's license and became a full-time painter. In 1996, she rented her self-built adobe house, moved to Guanajuato, Mexico, and stayed for 15 years. She learned to read tarot from a santera in Leon and has practiced ever since. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you.
Shemai Rodriguez, daughter of Anita Rodriguez, is descended from 2 generations of Taos painters. Additionally, her family has lived in Taos for centuries, giving her a deep connection to art, the land, people, and the special blend of cultures unique to this area. After 25 years as a project coordinator in both corporate and small business environments, Shemai brings both a high-level and a grassroots perspective to her professional position of marketing and engagement manager at the Harwood Museum of Art here in Taos. Having served as a Red Cross board member, a United Way campaign communications coordinator, and as a member of the nonprofit community since her return to Taos in 2010, she has been involved in community service for over 30 years. Shemai was an architecture major at the University of New Mexico and learned the arts of Enjarrando from her mother, Anita. Shemai loves spending time with her family, cooking, yoga, and meditation, or as she calls it, exploring the inner landscape. Welcome, Shemai.
Thank you, everybody.
And so at this time, I'll go ahead and turn the floor to you two, and we're looking forward to seeing the slideshow that you prepared and hearing about your experiences together. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I would like to begin with a second land acknowledgement. My people have lived here for over 500 years. And although I recognize that the Tewa people were here before us, I think it's also appropriate not to simply forget that my people have been here for 500 years, changed the landscape, and profoundly changed native culture. So for starters, show us the first slide. This is Genoveva Lopez from Alcalde, New Mexico. And it's a visual example of the way in which the craft of Enjarrando has been passed from one generation to another. When I decided to become an Enjarradora, I went into the villages, and this was one of the women that I worked with. Okay, you were on that job. You, Hank?
I do recall her. She was lovely. Yeah, and this particular image actually really is so meaningful in so many ways, you know, and I'm so delighted to have the opportunity here to share an experience that I've had that, of course, only as I became older did I realize was an incredible rarity. This lifestyle seemed like a perfectly normal existence to me until I left Taos and realized that was just not the case. But this image really exemplifies the nature of the process by which the techniques and the methodology are passed from elder to younger, and very often from woman to woman, which really brings this image to me to heart to represent the experience that I've been able to share.
Look how old her trowel is. It's been used so much that it now is flexible and it bends. The Enjarradoras traditionally were experts in maintenance and repair, which of course is vitally important. We were the embellishers of the architecture. We did all the plastering, the external and exterior plaster. We laid the mud floors. We built the fireplaces, which we owned. All of the hearths belonged to women. And we also covered the walls with colored clay slips in a process that is called enjarrando. These were the specialties of Native women, and incidentally, not only Pueblo women, but in the 80% of the people of this world, 80% who live in casas, in houses of adobe, the women are always the finishers. We are always the embellishers. And as women, we bring to the world so much beauty. What would it be like with no jewelry, no makeup, nothing but suits and ties and change?
Next slide. It's there.
You were on that one too.
I was, and this really helps share the fact, this is such an amazing material that has become universal in so many ways, not only through time, but through geography as well, for so many reasons. But this hands-on use of the material really exemplifies the fact that it's non-toxic, it's non-polluting, it's malleable in 1,000 different ways, any of the ways in which clay can be molded, adobe can be molded, and it is sustainable in a way that is endless. It's literally beneath our feet wherever we may exist and available to us, and creates, or rather moves from material to structure with incredibly few steps of processing. It's a very natural, available material. And passing this on to the kids, delivering workshops like this was just such a joy, not only because you're passing all of this benefit onto the next generation, but because to them it was so much like play, because of the actual giant mud pie that we were able to help them build.
Oh, this was a project for the New Mexico Arts Commission where we went from school to school to teach horno building. The original horno is not a Pueblo construction. The word adobe comes from the Arabic. The horno, or adobe, outside adobe oven, originated in Egypt. And I lived and worked in Egypt. And their hornos are extremely sophisticated. Not only they have 2 floors, right? And they're thrown together once again by Egyptian enjarradoras with whatever they have lying around the yard, the kids running around. They build their hornos, which they use to make bread called esh. And these hornos are built with a floor. I don't know if we included a picture of that.
We did not.
Okay, so that you can fire it continuously. With this style of oven, you build a fire, you build up the bed of coals, and then when the whole structure is hot, you rake out the coals, and then with a mop, you clean the inside of the oven, and then you put in your bread. But when it cools down, you have to start all over again. You have to build another fire, you have to wait till it burns down to coals, etc., etc. But with the Egyptian style horno, you could just keep adding wood and you could bake for days. But even more important, you don't have to use your good firewood. You can use corn husks. In Egypt, I saw women using sugarcane husks to bake endless plates of bread. So next slide. This is another example of the transmission of the culture. That's Shemai on the right. And on the left is her peer, the former Emerson Gomez. She went to school with him. And here we are with Emerson's parents, Susie and Henry Gomez, plastering their house and helping them get ready for the fiesta of San Jeronimo. When I came back from California with my daughter, I got a job working at Taos Pueblo as a Head Start teacher. And I worked there for several years, and I became friends with the mothers of my students. And so I just helped them out at the Pueblo.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody else has had the experience of discovering that you had an unusual childhood, but this moment represents something for me of that moment, of not only being able to participate in a tradition like this, but to be able to do it with people that were like family for us, because Susie, Henry, and Emerson was almost a brother to me as I was growing up. So there's that connection that exists in a very personal, very emotional way. And then there's the practical connection as well, as I can't help but wonder how many hands, as I'm working that trowel over the sill of that window, how many times has that been replastered and how many hands have touched that mud? It's a beautiful example of the way this technology has traveled through the centuries.
When Shemai was growing up in Taos, and actually when I was growing up in Taos too, we thought it was really the most boring place in the world, and we couldn't wait to get out. Or I couldn't. The boys in the National Guard actually prayed for war to break the boredom. Little did we know how incredibly exotic and culturally rich until we left and found out that the world is not flat, and you don't fall off in the void when you go past Albuquerque, which was a big surprise. The main reason why adobe is criticized is because it melts, right? That's what everybody says. It has to be continuously maintained. Who wants to do that? Well, that's the best thing about it. Adobe is a material that melts back into the earth when it is no longer needed, leaving behind no carbon footprint. What are we going to do with all the trailers? What are we going to do with those cement block houses? What are we going to do with all those concrete paths? What about all those Walmarts? Those dollar stores? There's no place to put that garbage. So from the moment, the true price of a building material, you have to take into account from the point of extraction to the point of disposal. So if you have a building material, that means you have to go to another country, practice conquest and colonization, destroy the ecology to bring that material back, manufacture it with fossil fuels, transport it with more fossil fuels, process it with electric tools in order to have a roof. What is the true cost? And then when do you have to dispose of it? So we don't look at the true cost of our building materials. 80% of the people in this world lived in houses of adobe, but along came industrial and building materials and corporate architecture. The big secret is this: how can they get rich selling you something that's free? So they're going to tell you it's no good, it's primitive, it's stupid, it signifies poverty. Here's my cement block. Okay, Juan used to sell all this in town, but here comes a cement block salesman. It's better. You know, it builds straight house. So Juan is out of work. And then the price of the cement block goes up, but you have no choice. See how it happens? Change. This is the church at Trampas, where both Shemai and I have worked. It was immortalized by Hansel Adams in a really famous photograph. And these are the Enjarradoras and the Zoqueteros of this village, almost all of whom are named Lopez. The Penitente Morada and the church are this far apart. You can put your hand on the church and touch the wall of the Morada at the same time, which gives you an idea of how deeply integrated this community is with its past. That's where Cousin Rose lives.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's good to keep in mind as well is that this image represents such a simple material and such a humble cycle, yet what you're looking at is potentially infinite repetition here. So this particular image represents the fact that if a community comes together and creates an adobe building and then gathers year after year to maintain it as a community would, this is something that could go on for what, 100 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years, potentially infinitely into the future. So this simplicity and this humility of cycle and material represents something that is incredibly profound and incredibly long-lived and will stretch not only across generations, but across continents as well. Next slide.
This is what you call a squinch. I learned to build these in Egypt when I went there to work with Hassan Fathi. His masons have no levels, no wheelbarrows, no trowels, no electrical tools. They only have one tool, which is an adze about this big, a tiny little adze. That's all they use. For 6,000 years, Shemai is talking about simplicity. If something is simple and it lasts for 6,000 years, it's gotta be good. Like the recipe for tamales, which has got to be at least 4,000 years old. A squinch is an arch or a niche that is built over the corner of a square. This table, pretend that it's got 4 walls and the table itself is hollow. And I want to turn this square into an octagon because I want to build a dome on top of it. So I build a squinch in each corner. That squinch turns the square into an octagon. Do you understand? And then I can build up the wall between the squinches and build a dome, a perfect dome. Change? That's Hassan Fathi, who came to the United States in the early 80s. He was hired by the Saudis to build a village in Abiquiu. The Saudis foresaw problems in the Middle East and wanted to build a refuge to relocate their families. So this village in Abiquiu, which was called Dar al-Islam, and which Hassan Bey flew to the United States to supervise the building of, had a madrasa for boys, a madrasa for girls. It was a village in and here he is demonstrating how to draw the curve for a barrel arch. In Egypt, you have to work as an apprentice for 20 years before you are allowed to draw that. However, Hassan Bey, being a modern architect, showed how you can take a piece of plywood or wood and drop a chain from the corner to the corner. The chain naturally falls in the curve that you need for a barrel arch. So with a jigsaw, you cut out this curve, and then you can use this piece of plywood as a form to build a perfect barrel arch. Was that clear as mud?
And this demonstrates the way in which technology that is this simple and a material that this is available can be shared infinitely across the world. And one of the things that came up as I was writing my notes on my comments for today, there were a couple of words that I had to start scratching out because they kept repeating so often. And universal, infinite, the endless reach of this particular material is so prevalent and so much a part of the attributes of the material that it just kept popping up in the comments. So I'll try not to say those words too many times. But this particular example is one of the great ways in which we can show that this particular technology is so incredibly shareable, that it becomes a global availability and a universal methodology that's available to people around the world. Next slide.
There's Shemai building a squinch over our entryway. We have an adobe dome over the entryway to my house. I built it. It's about 35 years old now. It has never leaked. Let me repeat. It is made of adobe and it has never leaked. Okay. I was a contractor. I had a license. I hung out with the machos. And the roof on the rest of my house is code. It's framed in. It's got insulation. And it's got a Bry surface on. And in the 35 years that it has been in existence, it has been repaired a couple of times. Think. The expense of lumber, insulation, Bry, as opposed to mud. Think. I can build a dome that's 15 feet across. And with the help of Mark Goldman, architect from UNM, we easily figured out how to insulate it.
Yeah, Adobe is challenged in a lot of ways by the structure and the profit model that operates so prevalently within the construction industry. But building codes, for example, it's very difficult to get past building codes when it comes to adobe architecture. Yet it's so incredibly durable, and not only durable, but anybody who's lived in an adobe house really understands the comfort and the security that it provides, along with the long life that we've mentioned so many times. So it really is a shame. It really is a shame that there's so many obstacles to being able to construct adobe architecture in mass, which would be so beneficial to in so many ways, particularly with migration that is going to be occurring with climate change and all of the conflicts that are arising around the world. Humanity is going to be on the move for possibly decades, centuries to come. Imagine if you arrived in a new place and there was earth beneath your feet out of which you could build beautiful structures that when you were finally able to return to your homes, then you could just abandon and would melt quietly back into the earth from which they came. It is a real shame that it is a building material that is not embraced more widely. Next slide.
The material of adobe and the material that we use in modern building is the way in which we separate ourselves and connect ourselves to nature. The object of a building is to protect you from the weather, from the cold, from the heat, from the saber-toothed tiger and all that, right? But don't forget, it also connects you with nature. It is the membrane between you and the outside. And architecture is organic. Wherever people go, whatever their culture is, wherever in the world they live, they generate architecture. Just the way a mollusk generate their shell. It's almost an organic process. So the materials that we use and the way in which we build says so much about us. It tells us how we relate to nature. It tells us, excuse me, if our relationship to nature is one that is benign or is it hostile? The building materials that we use now are destructive from the point of extraction, through transportation, through processing, through disposal. What do they say about our relationship with nature? The construction business is second only to the war industry in destroying our environment. Cement alone is responsible for 8% of air pollution. So the building in which you live connects you or disconnects you from nature in a profound, don't think this does not affect you. If you actually live in an adobe building, she's right. There's a feeling of comfort, of security, of being truly sheltered. There's no backgassing from tires, from asbestos, from wood preservatives. There's no formaldehyde seeping into your environment. So the material that we use dictates our connection with nature. And if that is the case, we're in trouble. Now, this is another thing that I learned to build from Hustling Office Masons. This is the concho above my dining room table in my house. Very beautiful house. It has waterproof mud floors laid on ground grade with no concrete underneath over subfloor heating. I repeat, they are waterproof. They look like pure cordovan leather. They're gorgeous. They're illegal.
And do you know what the square foot price is? Lately, it's incredibly low.
It's the cheapest floor in the world.
Yeah. And they're
Period.
gorgeous.
Hands down. All kind. Everything. Rock, brick, concrete, wood. Mud floors are cheaper.
And this beautiful shape here really demonstrates the infinite ways in which you can interpret your home. So if you choose to build an adobe home, there is no limit to the shapes and ways in which you can express yourself by beautifying your home with all of the possibilities. And I cannot help but wonder, way back when this type of architecture was first being introduced into this part of the world, which of course would have been a very tough lifestyle back then. how important it would have been to have these elements around your home that create beauty and create comfort as you struggle to survive in such a harsh landscape. I just love this conch. This is just a beautiful embellishment. There we go. Oops.
Okay, that's, Shemai and I built that on West Romero Road, wasn't it?
I can't remember. the
Skull, that was
location.
their name.
Skull. This is one of my favorites. This particular image, the floor, the chair, the banco, the fireplace, the plaster on the walls, the colored clay slip, all of that is earth, is constructed out of earth. It's an incredibly versatile material. And I didn't say universal.
And Shemai was little enough to get behind the fireplace and plaster behind there.
Yeah, it's a freestanding fireplace. It's actually, what, about 8 or 12 inches away from the wall behind it. Just a beautiful, graceful shape.
We were the only two women in the construction business for years. We were slugging it out with the machos. And sometimes they really resented I ain't gonna work with no PUSSY, this guy said. And he walked off the job. Next year, I was back there again. He saw me. This time he didn't walk off the job, but he was really rude. Time went by, time went by. One day it was Fiesta and I needed our guys. And so I knew where they were. I went to Tano's bar, right? And this guy was there and he was really drunk. And my guys were not there. And I thought, uh-oh. And all of a sudden he stood up and he says, "You fat woman, I double tequila. She's got more balls than any man here." That backhanded compliment was really a compliment because it showed that year after year, we were there again in our coveralls with our knee pads, doing everything we could to look as ugly as possible. Because you know how construction workers. Next slide. This fireplace was designed by my mother, Shemai's grandmother in Plaza de Retiro. And it was designed to hold my mother's pottery collection from Santo Domingo. And Shemai helped me build that fireplace too.
Yeah, so there's 3 generations of our family embedded in this fireplace. My beloved grandmother, who was every sense of the wonderful nature of that type of relationship, my mom and me. Next slide. And as I listen to younger people today with the possibility of owning their own home, moving further and further and further from their grasp, I cannot help but wonder what role Adobe could play in that. My husband and I are looking to do some construction in the coming year. And he's probably going to end up making Adobes because particularly with the cost of construction materials in this particular day, it is the most affordable and the most durable way that we can construct a home that will then turn out to be more valuable than it would be out of practically any other material. So even in the short term, I cannot help but wonder what the free availability of Adobe as a building material would mean to young people who are trying to achieve homeownership for the first time.
It's non-polluting. It's non-toxic. It's universally available. It leaves a low carbon footprint. Those are the reasons why it's not being used. Take the medical profession and the insurance companies. Doctors hate them, nurses hate them, patients hate them. The profit motive should not be the driver of something that is essential for life. The profit motive does not belong in medicine, and it does not belong in housing. And the biggest true drawback of Adobe is that it's labor intensive. So it almost imposes collective construction. So all the villages in northern New Mexico who maintain their churches every year have to get all of their petty feuds, all of their differences, get together, get the mud, get the straw, and do it. This is living architecture. It keeps the community alive. I need for you to fix me. Stop your squabbles. And the architecture is kept alive in turn by the community. This fireplace is in the Mabel Dodge Lujan house. And Shemai and I built that years and years ago with Philip Cantu. And they told us, Philip Otero was the CEO of the Millicent Raj, of the Mabel Dodge house for years. And there was all these stories about this room was haunted. But there was this little girl ghost there. And after we built the fireplace, the ghost was gone. Maybe she didn't like the way we talked or something.
Or perhaps, there's something incredibly empowering about building your own stuff. And Mom is absolutely right. Adobe is an incredibly heavy material to use. I can't remember what the number was, but we once calculated the weight of each handful of mud that you lift over the course of a day. By the end of the day and the end of the week adds up to tons and tons of weight. So it really is a very heavy material. But the reward and the empowering feeling that you get when you finish constructing out of something like this is really an incredible feeling.
I can't remember who this I built for.
And I don't know how many fireplaces we built or how many floors we laid. There's no way to go. We were pointing out on our way to the Millicent Rogers today as we were driving through the roads, and there was one there and one there, the plaster job there, the fireplace there. There's been a lot of building over the years. Knowing that these things that are constructed out of Adobe will remain standing for so long is another way in which, particularly for a woman and particularly for somebody who is trying to make their way through a tough environment as the construction industry is for a female, the ability to work that hard and to create something that will be standing for that long is a very expanding, empowering experience.
I watched all my years in the construction business how women get continually ripped off. You are told that you'll break your fingernails if you learn to climb a ladder. You're trained to be afraid of using electrical tools. This is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout your life. And it deprives you of the deep satisfaction that Shemai is talking about. I can lie in my bed and look up at those latillas and remember how I nailed them down. Remember how hard I worked. Remember that my blood is on those latillas and that Shemai fell through the roof of that room and we survived. When the Medinas came to pour the cement for our footings, Shemai and I pulled the cement for that whole house. And according to law, they're not allowed to get off the truck and help any construction worker because of insurance claims and so on. So it took 3 truckloads. And on the 3rd truckload, Shemai and I were still pulling cement, and the guys felt so sorry for us. They got off the truck and helped us finish the job. And when we finished, we couldn't stand up. Our backs hurt so much. We walked over, stooped over into the car and put our arms around each other and cried, "We did it! We did it!" So the satisfaction and the feeling of power, women should take back our right to build and to talk about building. I was a contractor. I would go talk to the couple, and the wife was ignored. The guy, he wants to know how many square feet is it going to be and how much is it going to cost. The woman says, "I'm going to be washing dishes for the rest of my life in this window. I want that window to frame Taos Mountain." So I always talked to the women. Next slide.
Oops.
These are African Enjarradoras. Everywhere in the world where the building material is mud, it is the women who are the embellishers. There's I think somewhere in West Africa, there is a tribe of women who paint their houses and the walls look like a Kandinsky painting. There's a book called, we have it, I can't remember, but it's amazing, and it's all natural clays and plant dyes. And here they are in an African village.
And I have to say, honestly, I have never met these women, obviously, but in my inner self, there is a sisterhood, a global sisterhood that covers all continents, that women like this and women like us share. It wouldn't matter where we were from or what needed to be done. If we were all plopped onto a construction site in a surprise time warp situation, we would all know exactly what to do, and we would all be able to come together to create a beautiful space for our families.
There's another thing, is I've worked on crews with women and I've worked on crews with men. When women work together, it's kind of like a school of fish. They all turn at the same time, or like a flock of birds. And it's been scientifically proven that it is not eyesight or hearing that makes them all know to go at that very instance. It's something else, much more subtle. And I've lived in New Mexico and lived in Indian country. I've cooked meals for 50 people over an open campfire. And I've watched how women work together. And she's right. You could drop us out of an airplane into any earth building culture and we'd know exactly what to do. We would immediately be sisters.
It's universal. Next slide.
I think that this is a restoration project of a roof somewhere in North Africa, because this method of building, of putting adobes on their side like this, is called mushrabeya. And it is designed to give privacy to women, because if you have a wall like this on your patio and you're in the street and you're walking outside, you're not going to be able to see inside. But the women can peek out. And at the same time, it allows ventilation, because this is a desert climate and it gets really hot.
Yeah, this location, I believe, is called Chan Chan. And the thing that I really like about this particular image is that yes, adobe is a wonderful material, and yes, it is so available and has so many fabulous attributes. But very often when people think of constructions in mud, they think of a singular residential, small scale structure. When in reality, mud actually has incredible scalability and incredible versatility, and could potentially be used to construct major facilities around the world. Slide. Let me go back.
That's a mosque in Mali, right? And those poles sticking out of the wall are actually scaffolding. So when it needs to be repaired, which isn't very often because the rainfall in this part of the world is very slight, the plasters simply stand on those sticks. This is a huge building. It's very old. We all live in Taos, right? We've all seen Taos Pueblo. It's 1,000 years old. How many 1,000-year-old frame houses have you seen? If you invest in a house and you think of your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, what would you rather have, adobe or frame house? Incidentally, another characteristic of adobe, which is now incredibly relevant due to climate change and wildfires, is it doesn't burn down. It's fireproof. Change.
Actually,
Okay.
I would just want to comment that one of the things that I discovered that was just a special moment is that when you look at images of the restoration and the maintenance of this particular building, it looks exactly the same as the restoration of it occurs in Trampas and occurs at the Ranchos Church. The only difference, of course, is the clothing that they're wearing, the color of their skin, the culture, but the process is exactly the same. Really a wonderful thing to sort of have a moment about. Next slide.
So they say that adobe is only good for rural construction. One image is worth 1,000 words. This is Yemen. 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 stories high. This was built before the invention of rebar and cement. In addition, there is no wood in these areas. The only available wood is from pine trees, which is spongy and has no structural strength. The only wood that is used in these structures are made from tiny little precious pieces of wood that they fit together with incredible skill to make their doorways. No wood, no cement, no wheelbarrows, no levels. No building regulations, because the knowledge of how to build was distributed democratically among all people. Women, children, when I grew up around it, the trick was run, because they'll put you to work. They'll make you haul water, they'll make you take off your shoes and mix the mud by walking in it. We grew up around buildings that were 1,000 years old. Shemai, when she grew up, asked for water in 3 languages.
Yeah, this is an incredible example of the potential of vertical construction.
So I know that people, and when I began in my 30s to build with Adobe, they thought I was crazy. I was the only woman with a license in the North. And unfortunately, I was gorgeous. So that did not help, right? And furthermore, so was Shemai. And we'd wrap ourselves in dirty rags and walk onto the construction site, and our foreman would walk in front and say, "What's the matter? You guys don't have anything to do?" And one guy who said to me was, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, a little bit of remodeling. We do mud floors, exterior, interior plaster, and fireplaces." "Oh, do you juggle?" "No, I don't have a license for that." He was a laborer. So that's what we ran into. And some guys were wonderful to us. They loaned us tools, they sent us jobs. And some guys sabotaged us and threw our tools into the foundation and poured cement over them and cheated us.
Yeah, being a female in the construction industry definitely had its challenges. But you know, it builds strength and it builds incredible resilience, and it builds a determination that has served, I know myself very well through life. And it speaks to, you know, this, I think we're at one of the closing slides here. So the future of earth building technology. So we have this incredible material, universally available, that is currently being challenged by building codes and by attitudes that do not necessarily welcome the female elements of this particular tradition onto the construction site. But I cannot help but believe that the very fact that this material is so available and that humanity will always need structure to shelter themselves, that Adobe as a moving forward and a part of our future is absolutely inevitable. There's absolutely no way that we cannot move forward as a species without embracing or continuing to embrace Adobe architecture. And as far as mom efforts are going forward, there are efforts to create educational opportunities to help teach this technology. There's an organization being started that will actually deliver workshops that will provide building and repair opportunities for homes that could not otherwise afford it. There are films being produced that will teach the technology as well. So there are efforts to teach this technology and the ability of the nature of the material that will just sort of carry it forward naturally.
We have formed an organization called CASA.
Community Association for Sustainable Adobe.
And in the spring at the Talpa Community Center, we will be teaching Orno construction. And we will teach the Egyptian Orno construction and the traditional New Mexico Orno construction. In addition to that, we will be teaching technologies like a malkaf. The malkaf was also invented in Egypt. The malkaf is an adobe tube, something like a fireplace that cools your house, get this, without using any energy except the wind. Heard about climate change? Are we going to get hotter or are we going to get colder? So teaching malkafs. What about prefab malkafs for trailers? People who live in trailers are really going to suffer. So CASA is going to teach these technologies. We are in the process of filming them. We are making short videos that are so succinct, so carefully edited, that if you don't speak English, you'll understand by watching the video how to do it. And we are distributing these videos through an LLC called Magic Mountain Movies, who are qualified and have the infrastructure to send them to colleges and universities and schools. When I started out in Jarando and they made fun of me and they took pictures of my boobs, you know, I thought to myself, this is the building material of the future. Now that I'm 82 years old and I have the dome over my entryway to prove what I'm talking about, the time has come. We don't have any choice. We have to turn to sustainable building materials. So stay tuned, because CASA is going to blow your mind.
Well, thank you so much for that enlightening presentation. I really appreciate everything you shared about connecting the practices to looking into the future, that we've got such a window into the next generations right here, and hearing about the teaching that's coming up. I think that's so important at this time too. And I just wanted to ask, so how old were both of you when you started working together?
My earliest memories, I think I was in a diaper, actually, was in a mud boat, which is a flat bottomed container that you use to mix mud in. So I couldn't guess, but 2, maybe. And I would imagine I wasn't very much help, but I get an A for effort.
That's not true. And I took the diaper off. And you mix the whole boat. So she was brought up on construction sites.
Yeah, since I can remember.
And I started in my, let's see, I was in my mid-20s.
Wow. Wow. And then I wanted to turn it out to our audience. Does anyone have a question for Anita or Shemai?
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this great presentation. Thank you both, but isn't Adobe essentially a curtain wall that you put between 2 posts with a beam on top?
No.
Okay, so you build up the corners or something?
You build up the corners, it's poured or laid on foundations.
Okay,
The old ones were rock and mud. Now concrete has its place. I'm not totally against concrete. I'm just against its use to excess and where it's not needed. But you build an adobe house now on a concrete footing. You put the corners up first.
okay, so that gives you the stability to.
Yeah, I mean, Taos Pueblos is 5 stories high and it's 1,000 years old.
It's incredible.
So, you know, there it is.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for everyone being here. Thank you, Anita and Shemai, and thank you to the Millicent Rogers Museum and the National Endowment for the Arts for the strong support for this exhibition and programs. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for being here today. We're excited to present another program for New Mexico artists around the kitchen table. And the programs and the exhibition are both sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts, and we're so grateful for your support. Thank you so much. My name is Michelle Lantieri. I'm the guest curator for the exhibition and the program series, and I want to welcome you here today. Really excited about this panel discussion that we're about to get into. And so I'm really honored to be here with 2 guests. This is Dante Biss-Grayson. Thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Charine Pilar Gonzales. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome. Today's topic is indigenizing film and fashion through storytelling in northern New Mexico. And we're thinking about these different mediums, ways that future generations can get into all kinds of ways of telling stories through visual media, through sound, through video, anything's possible. So we're at the kitchen table today to think through that and also look at some of the examples that these 2 artists have been working on in really recent years. So I want to introduce you to both of the artists in more detail. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and start with Charine here. So Charine is from San Ildefonso Pueblo. She is the daughter of Kevin Gonzales, granddaughter of Barbara and Robert Gonzales, and the great-granddaughter of Maria and Julian Martinez. So Charine is a Tewa filmmaker, and she's based in Santa Fe. Her esteemed short film, Arquillo Maria Martinez, premiered at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and it was acquired by the Heard Museum in Phoenix for an upcoming exhibition that'll happen next year. So Charine aims to intertwine memories, dreams, and truths through story. She's a producer for the Native Lens Project, which is a crowdsourced collaboration by Rocky Mountain PBS and KSUT Tribal Radio. Charine earned a BFA in Cinematic Arts and Technology from the Institute of American Indian Arts, and also a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Communication from Fort Lewis College in Colorado. In 2021, Charine was the Sundance Institute Indigenous Program Native Lab Artist in Residence.
Sundance is a fan.
Excellent. And also an Artist in Business Leadership Fellow through the First Peoples Fund. And also a Jackson Wild Media Lab Fellow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
She's also started a Native multimedia production company, Povey Studios. And in 2022, she was selected for the Jackson Wild Summit MCA Fellowship and the LA Skins Fest TV Writers Lab Fellowship. Last but not least, she was recently accepted into the IAIA Institute of American Indian Arts Master of Fine Arts Creative Writing Program and has started that, and she's focusing on screenwriting. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Michelle. I'm really excited for these kitchen table talks because I think that this is really where a lot of important conversations happen. I'll just quickly introduce myself in Tewa too. And again, yeah, my name is Charine Pilar Gonzales, and I'm from San Ildefonso Pueblo. And when I think about like indigenizing the film space, a lot comes to mind. But I think like first and foremost, what sticks with me is that like Native people, like we've been telling stories since the beginning. Storytelling is already in itself an indigenous art form. And I think like using film, right? Like film was often like a place where Native people were exploited in really terrible ways often. So, like during like the Western film era and like the very early stages of film. So for me, I think like indigenizing Native film like really means like controlling our narrative and incorporating a lot of our traditional values into film. And we can talk a little bit more about this later too, but I want to get to this first film I want to present to you because I've actually made the mistake myself of like saying, oh, this isn't a Native film. But like the more I've grown into like who I am as a filmmaker, I've realized that this is a Native film because I'm Native and I made it. And so I wanted to start off with Bear News.
And we're really excited to go ahead and jump in and get to know what indigenizing film and fashion mean to both of you. And I think it's so great that you all are here together at the table because I feel like there's a lot of crossover between these different mediums that you all are working in. And Dante, I know you've done some different things with recording the fashion shows that you're working on. And I wanted to go ahead and introduce you in detail to our audiences. And so Dante Biss-Grayson is Eagle Clan from the Osage Nation, and his Osage name is Wasata, first son of Eagle Clan. He's based here in Taos, and his fashion house, Sky Eagle Fashion House, is also here in Taos, and it's become a leader in Native design and art. So come stop by there if you're in town. And so Biss-Grayson, he is also the stepson of the late Apsaligay Crow painter Earl Biss. And so after many tours overseas in Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and Italy, Dante returned home with many traumatic incidents locked deep inside his heart and soul. And so he needed a release, he needed therapy. And so he opened his art and fashion studios. He works on a wide variety of media. He paints, writes poetry, sculpts, creates art installation, and is a fashion designer, and also makes holograms. We have one here that you can see.
They're super cool.
It's really super cool. Yeah, a digital powwow. And so Dante is honored to work with his group and everything they've completed so far, and he looks forward to future projects. And we do too. Look forward to seeing what's next
Absolutely.
for you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Dante Biss-Grayson. I can say that Osage name is Waseata. I'm first son of the Eagle clan. Sky Eagle Collection has turned into one of the premier fashion houses in Indian country. Blending kind of, not the cultural, the ceremonial aspect, but the design aspect of a lot of our ribbon work and making it for new warriors in the modern world. So I really see that as something, a space that, native indigenous designers really haven't been on the global stage for fashion. And now I'm, slowly getting to that point where, we're going to Paris next year. I've been to London Fashion Week, south of France, produce our own shows, New York Fashion Week. And we're showing them that we're still here. And then we can also keep up and shoulder to shoulder with some of the bigger fashion houses. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And so I think what I'll do is go ahead and turn the table over to you, Charine, to start with your videos, and then we'll hear a lot more about Dante's experience and where things are going with your projects.
Sounds great.
Okay, this is. I'm not sure.
The CDC, the virus has killed at least 25 people in the US, and hundreds of cases across the country have been reported. The virus is the oil industry worldwide, which is already unsustainable. As what next? Americans we slept with.
You scared me at the end.
Am I on the Zoom right now? Or?
I'm trying to navigate it, Charine. Oh, wait. Is this the same one or a different one?
I think she wants to intro each one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's too hard though, we can just.
Well,
go
I'm.
through. That's okay too.
You lose the controls. Here we go. So now I can let you do this.
Okay.
If maybe you could do it.
Let's try.
Okay.
There you are.
That's me. We'll swing getting ready
There we
for like
go.
pizza.
Okay.
Just takes it a while.
All right, so you are back on.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd love to hear more about it.
Great. Well, what you just saw was Bear News, and for me, like I said, I think like It's a funny, silly short film. I shot it in a night. This was right after COVID happened, and I was still supposed to present a project that I for my senior project, and my original plans all got way screwed up. So this Fair News was part of how I pivoted a little bit. But to segue into like something a little bit deeper, this is a more experimental short documentary we're about to watch that I made for Native Lens. Which again is like a Rocky Mountain PBS and KUCT Tribal Radio collaboration. I'm also a producer for this project. But yeah, this is a little more of an experimental short. It talks about some difficult emotions, but for me, I think that that's also really important to create space when we're talking about indigenizing film.
I remember it was pretty soon after I had moved to Santa Fe and away from the Pueblo that this happened. I believe it was the second plane out. I remember watching it as a little kid. The plane was flying real high in the sky, and then it disappears behind this cloud of smoke for a split second. And the next thing you know, the plane is just shooting straight down. It's going down, 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 down until it hits the ground. And the entire crowd at the air show goes silent. But I've never forgotten about that pilot's family and what they must have gone through their grief. But for me, it seems like I did not understand grief until I experienced the passing of my younger brother. His name was Tyler Gonzales, and he was 19 years old. That experience changed my life. Losing Tyler was the most tragic thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know how to describe grief to people because it's not something you ever really want people to understand. But the thing is, there was this moment in my life where I felt like I was on the verge of having everything together. Which now that I think back on it, I don't really know how close I actually was to that idealistic self-image that I put on. Then my world fell apart, and my brother passed away, and I tried so hard to just lean into what they always tell us to be as public people, to be strong and to not hold on to pain because we don't want those who have gone to be in pain with us. But the thing is I'm still recovering. I'm still coming out of my grief, and maybe expressing that in a more straightforward way will help me move on. Not from missing my brother, but the thing is maybe be able to become that person that I've always wanted to be. Because I don't think that my brother would want me to be feeling sorry for myself or to be just wishing that my life was different. Because I realize that I'm the person that needs to help shape my life. And even though I miss my brother every day, it's like I gotta keep going. He's rooting for me and we're still connected. I think that he's proud of me, and I think he's proud that I'm tired of being sad. I'm admitting to myself that I want to be happy, and it's okay to want to be happy.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you're back, yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm always like the one that's always like, okay, time to make things real sad, you guys. And then I try to switch it up and bring up the mood again. This next film we're gonna watch is actually a film of my younger sister, Anita Gonzales. And I feel like this is important to share because I think another piece of indigenizing film is to include our relatives and create space for our relatives to share stories too.
Hi, my name is Anita Gonzales. I'm from San Alfonso, Pueblo. I am 11 years old. I want to tell you a story about what coronavirus has changed for us and about Native people. I decided to make my own garden, and here we are, my garden, in COVID-19. It grows from squash, yellow squash, carrot, and melon. And here are my ducks. The gray one, the kind of like brown kind of duck is my dad's, and the white one is mine. I use some of those eggs to use for my garden, but we use them for our plants, which I've been using for my garden. Make some grow. Right there, that's Black Mesa. San Alfonso is like a family to us, everyone, including everyone. San Alfonso Pueblo, it's like we're all like a big family together. Today is San Francisco, it's over there, and you can even dance. That's the one thing about pieces. We have like a lot of dances. I wanted to dance personally, but we couldn't because COVID-19. We had to do feasts at our own homes. Like, our family is big, so what we did was, at my house, we made a lot of food for people, our families, our loved ones in San Alfonso. So we made a sign saying that, San places today. You can drive up and pick your food up. And that's what we did. In the beginning, it was like around March. They sent a note. I was in Phoenix, so we didn't know what was going on. They came back, first week of school, the next week, we couldn't even go back to school. We got a note saying that we had to do virtual classes and I was sent homework home. We were excited, but then, now, we're not excited at all. We hate it. It's hard for us to like not go to school, but I'm saying like I want to go back to school for no reason. Cause virtuality sucks. Actually sucks. Everyone wear a mask, please. We want this coronavirus to end right now. We really want it to end right now. So please, everyone wear your mask. Be safe. Stay home. And everyone be safe.
Yeah, so for me, it's always funny watching that video. I'm always so grateful that me and my little sister decided to go out and film that because I think like literally like it just within a couple of months after this was made, she like became like a total teenager, and this was really like those last moments of like her childhood, I felt like. And so the next short clip I want to show is the Riverbank Pokega trailer. This is a film that is sponsored by the Sundance Indigenous Program, First Peoples Fund, and the Senator John Pinto Memorial Grant. So it's a film I'm really proud of. It's kind of funny for me to look back on it because it is writing from like 4 or 5 years ago, and I feel like I've grown a lot as a storyteller since this film was first incepted, you know. So yeah, it's 3 years in the making. We were supposed to film the week that New Mexico shut down to COVID-19. So we ended up waiting a year, and then we spent another year in post. So yeah, here's the trailer. Okay, yeah, and then I guess we have time for the last quick one. Okay, the real quick last one is the Native Lens promo. And I felt like this was something I wanted to share just because it is a platform for any Native and Indigenous person in North America to share stories from our Native perspective. So really proud of this project, and I just wanted to share a promo with you guys.
We have always known the power of language. The way the words we speak over our hearts, bodies, and minds are the keys to healing and being. Storytelling is medicine, and voice is a gift. There are times this world tries to silence us. So remember, with each breath you take and each beat of your heart, you are love in motion and resistance in action. You are a living revolution, an endless well of ancestral prayers made into flesh and bone. You wield lightning in each step you take. Your heart holds stars and your spirit the sky, but know your throat carries the storm. Ready to rain nourishment with your powerful voice. We have the power to tell our stories from our lens, our eyes, and no one sees the world like you. So share what you see. Native Lens is a storytelling platform for Indigenous voices. Submit at nativelens.org.
Okay, so yeah, that was that was a quick rundown. And I think it's a good segue too, because actually collective that Dante is a part of Babadan. Am I saying that correctly? Yes. They actually submitted to Native Lens, so one of their films, Remburn, is featured on our Native Lens platform right now. So
Okay.
yeah,
I'm in that one.
yes, you are. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone.
Great work. Yeah, I don't know how to say it fully either. Yeah, they came down actually at the Taos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had lunch with them. I love their editing, like it's real ethereal.
Yeah, no, I love Remburn. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To Native Lens Commission, it's like, I really have to.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I just submitted for a screenplay lab.
Oh, you did?
Because I have a couple of those I wrote.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so I'm trying to like fine tune them and all that.
That's great.
I need some new fresh eyes though.
Yeah, let me know.
You're the pro.
I do script consulting too.
Yeah, I'm just out there typing a million ideas.
Okay, that's where you gotta start, you know,
Yeah.
and then fine tune, like you said.
And that's one of the things that is really awesome about this kind of project too, is bringing artists together. So hopefully new partnerships will form, right? Everybody meeting and just kind of that creative exchange, like really what Kitchen Table is all about, really just coming back to this kind of foundational space, and a lot of unexpected too, you know, a lot of it is just getting in there and doing the work and seeing what happens from there. And so we've got this next video, which is going to give an overview of where Dante is coming from with your work. And do you want to give like kind of a lead up to what we're going to see, or?
Sure. So this was, you know, after I got back from the military overseas, and wanted to kind of externalize a lot of trauma that I had over there, because I was downrange, like, you know, like 12 years, a lot of time over there. And then that's around the same time I found out about MMIW, and my daughter was born. So I really wanted to have like a new, fresh way to advocate. I don't know, you know, it kind of turned into like a new mission, that type of thing. So from my own therapy into, you know, social justice and advocating for issues impacting Indian country. And then that's where it kind of like, I call it my design renaissance, because I like when I was downrange in the Middle East, it was like I didn't have time really to, you know, create, but I had a lot of notes, a lot of ideas. And so when I came back, it's like this whole renaissance. And then PBS New Mexico, they reached out to me. And that was, it's really kind of like a couple of years, like a year and a half ago, something like that. But it was a good like acknowledgement of, you know, the journey that I'm on, and you know, being able to share with more people, you know, kind of what I'm doing. And it was cool because we went out in the middle, we went out in the landscape and the nature, and had some drones, and we're producing. That was my first time around that whole like production of a piece, and that's like, then I had my other documentaries that we did.
Yeah.
And then the fashion shows where it's like, you're artists, but then the vision of being in a fashion show versus producing your own is a whole different thing, because you get to have the creative control or creative openness or whatever, however you want to call it. So yeah, that was my first kind of like inkling of the film side of it. And then I was in Killer's Flower Moon as well. I got credited with like special effects.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's like this whole snowball thing. So it's been fun.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, just.
I'm hanging out with Leo. No.
No big deal.
Uncle Marty,
Okay,
Yeah,
You
yeah,
ready?
it's good and my work, yeah.
Sometimes you gotta just rip the Band-Aid off. The trauma series is abstract expressionism, and what it entails is being able to express and externalize raw emotion, raw trauma. I was through multiple different traumatic incidents, so it was hard to separate them. So being able to just have a platform where I could yell, scream, throw the canvas around, remember what happened, different flashes of memories, and pull that raw emotion and put it on the canvas as a healing way. As a veteran, multiple tours downrange, you get exposed to helicopters crash. You get exposed to people shooting missiles at you, people shooting rockets, mortars, guns, small arms fire. So it was a matter of responding so that we can save somebody. And it didn't matter who, we wanted to make sure that we saved somebody. But during those incidents, we didn't save everybody, right? And a lot of people died in our hands, but at least they knew that they had somebody. There's a couple of incidents that we recovered, 18 US troops out of a Chinook helicopter side of a mountain, right? One of many days, one of many incidents, and so it kind of all just blurs. I mean, the brutality of war, they were putting makeshift bombs inside of kids. And it was, definitely it was difficult. Seeing things like that, gotta press on. And so coming back to the United States, started unpacking all of that, I can see why we have so many veterans who commit suicide. They say there's 22 every single day. Abstract expressionism was the perfect platform for it, as far as being able to, this is the emotion I need to get out of me and heal it. I started out saying I'm going to do 22 paintings to honor the veterans. I painted the paintings with different knives as a reflection of that's how people were killing themselves. You put that medicine there, it's a big medicine, and so after the 22 paintings, I moved into expressionism. This is soldiers, caught in a storm. Kind of an allegory of the warriors in my tribe, hunting, surviving, thriving, war, caught in a storm, but also a little bit of sunlight on the horizon, a little bit of hope in there. I wanted to capture the feeling of war through another, platform. Yeah. This one definitely started the new journey, the new chapter in healing, and it's how I connect with New Mexico and the beautiful landscape, the colors, and then the giant clouds that we have here are so enormous and something's coming on the horizon, like another war, but it's nice because it always goes away. It kind of, you know, a nice little light rain. So that connection when I start the expressionist series with the land is very healing. The idea here is, you know, after the hunt, a successful hunt, when you go out to war, you want to succeed, you want to win. And these hunters, after the storm's still on the horizon, but they came back successful. So as the evolution of, you know, healing, there are some good days as well. And it's nice that I got to that point where, you know, from the expressionism, just the raw emotion to something that could be serene and joyful. This was even further evolution of painting to survive, painting for therapy. These works are me expressing freedom. I've been painting my whole life and grew up around the arts. And it's been different aspects of finding myself and finding a platform for my voice. And New Mexico is amazingly beautiful. It's a symphony, you know, it's like a living, breathing symphony where you hit this moment like an aria, like at the crescendo of it, the top of it, and you look at it and it's like, that is really beautiful to the point of, you know, like you're overwhelmed with the emotion that it's just so amazing that we're here, you know, as beings, you know, and then you start thinking about like the connection to it, like where we've been and how we're going to be going forward. We come from land, right? And there's just such beauty out there, and if you open your ears, your eyes, your heart, you can tune into it. There's cycles of death, there's cycles of amazing torrents of storms, like really rough. But it also opens doors to serenity. There's just moments of the day that are beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. You don't have to focus on the storms. You don't have to focus on the tornadoes. Because if you've gone through the tornadoes, if you're all, every day is going to be like that, right? But it gradually goes into life. Like, let's say there's a burn scar. Everything's going to burn out. Eventually, a little plant will come again. It shows you that you can heal, and that we can heal. After a scar in your heart and your soul, then you can, you know, see something that's beautiful again, right? Cycle of life, like I had my daughter. She saved me as well, and my wife. And, you know, it does heal. It shows you that after that birth scar, you can rebirth. You know, painting the pain away.
Thanks so much for sharing all of that. It's very personal and really talks a lot about where you're coming from on this journey. And this, when was this made?
A year and a half ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right around the time when I the next chapter was pivoting into fashion.
Yeah.
That was like my first scarf that I had designed.
Wow. Oh, that's neat.
That was about 6 months before our fashion show in Santa Fe last year.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot happened since then. So
Yeah.
And then like, you know, a lot of projects and just, you know, I'm just going with it, you know, ride the lightning, as they say, you know, and now we'll get to be strategic about our next few years and all that, see where we'll get to go.
Yeah.
You know, finally say, you know, collaboration's great. And then, but now I'm picking the right projects as well, because my bandwidth is maxed out.
Oh, right.
Yeah, my own personal mental health is important, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and, you know, it's yeah, that was a, you know, definitely a focal area where, the fashion came alive as well, and then, each one just kind of moving forward. And having, fashion there is also, it's an amazing design, explosion of ideas and renaissance, so it's just, in my mind, it's the start of a lot of things that I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you talk about the process of indigenizing your artistic mediums? And this is a question for both of you.
Sure, I feel.
Yeah, I think something I've been thinking a lot about lately is, oh gosh, and I really should remember where I first heard this, but I heard a conversation recently where, the word indigenous really wouldn't exist without colonization, because like we go by our traditional like names and stuff for our tribes, right? Like that was how we identified before colonization. So like the word indigenous in itself is it's I think it can be like very like pan-Indian, which is like it's very useful in some ways, but I do think like to truly like indigenize, I guess, like film or storytelling, like I think it's about getting really specific, with who we are and like our tribes that we come from and our value systems, and really like emphasizing, maybe remembering things that we have lost, but then also coming up with new ways of what it means to us as individuals to be like indigenous filmmakers or indigenous storytellers or indigenous fashion designers, because I think that is very different, depending on the tribes we come from and our own personal experiences too.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. Yeah, those are definitely some great steps too for, I think, ways forward of thinking about Native film and fashion. And
well, and I think also, with Scorsese, including Osage as part of like, the like going backwards and like figuring out what are the right steps forward in terms of like collaboration too. I think that's like super important. So it's so cool that you were involved in that project.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
It was great, I mean, and I think you hit on it a little bit earlier too, like, so like on the painting side, starving artist for many decades. And it was like, do I have to paint teepees to be an indigenous artist? Anything I paint is gonna be indigenous because I made it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so there was always that kind of like back and forth. And then when the fashion really started taking off, because it was just like, I didn't grow up wanting to be like a designer of fashion. It was just like art, and I came from like, Flemish Renaissance and that type of, because I went to the academy over there in Amsterdam. And like a fine art perspective, seeing beauty in the sunset, sunrise, and all that, and how does it, translate to fashion? And somehow it's just like I see it as a blank canvas, and then when people respond, they're like, that's powerful. I walk in the room, they're like, that's sky eagle, and people are turning their heads. It's a head turner, right? Just like a beautiful painting should be. When you go to a museum, you see Guernica, you're like, oh, blown away, right? That kind of power, like I want to like infuse into it. And then the designs being, I would never look into the ceremonial aspect of it as like, there's appreciation and appropriation, right? There's always that discussion. But there's never really too many designers that are in this couture, red carpet world and gala, events, because those are really, they're works of art, and then I started going into the native avant-garde, which is like this even more bold statements of like walkable, movable art, that type of thing. So, but also the design from the ribbon work, making them modern, because I would never do something that's like traditional, right? For our ceremony, I'm a straight dancer, Native American church, I wouldn't even touch, that's huge medicine. But I know that we have a lot of leaders who are in the boardrooms or doctors, teachers who want just a little dash of native, and that's where I see where Sky Eagle comes in, and they're very proud of wearing it. So a matter of just, balancing it, for the cultural, and a lot of people are like, hey, can I wear this too? I'm like, this is for everybody. If it was some of my traditional ribbon work, I'd be like, no, that's literally for me, for my ceremonies. So it's one of those ones where I think it's interesting good day to be indigenous and a good time to be indigenous, we're finally getting through. And then, like you said, with the Scorsese movie, there has been some backlash as far as it should have been like this, could have been like this, shoulda, woulda, oughta, coulda. If they want to tell their story, that's great. Definitely let them do that. But he opened up the door for a whole lot of, new conversations. And I was direct descendant of Henry Roan, which is one of the first cases of the FBI. He was murdered. And so my connection to it is deep. But being able to on this level of stage and having Scorsese, De Niro, and the whole team actually listen to us as a community versus just like the white hat savior coming in, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And the outcome may have not made everybody happy, but art also shouldn't make everybody happy. It opens that conversation. And, you know, they say in the fashion world, if you don't have haters, have you really made it? That type of thing. So I've read a good sister of mine, Cece Meadows, she said that. I'm always remember it. I'm like, well, you know, it's that, and so we just try to be like neutral on our side, but film, that's the power of art, right? You know, it opens up those conversations.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I think that's true. You know, that art is powerful and it's going to do a lot of things. And as long as it does something, as long as you're feeling some way or another about it, then it's doing its job and it's opening new ways of thinking, as you were talking about. Yeah. And so what drew you to the different mediums that you work in? And maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny question for me too, because I come from 6 generations of Pueblo pottery artists. And I'm talking about this as I'm next to some of my family, surrounded by my family artwork right now too. And to me, like storytelling is storytelling, and I feel like there's a lot that I learned from being around clay my entire life that really aided to how I move through and navigate the world as a Tewa filmmaker. I think for me, I was always so obsessed with cameras, you know, just always wanting to have a camera in my hands. But then also noticing too that there wasn't a lot of like Pueblo people like on screen, and even like when I'd see documentaries of my great grandmother Maria Martinez, you know, they were all done by like non-native people, honestly. And I was just like, I think that there's a huge opportunity here for me to help like take over that narrative and to give the power back to my family a little bit in some ways too, which is how Arquillo Maria Martinez came to be, which is like currently part of the exhibit here at Millicent Rogers. And yeah, super proud of that documentary. I think I'm still trying to figure out like where exactly I fall in like the film and TV world as my medium. Like I'm a writer, I'm a director, I also produce. And I don't just stick to one genre either. I allow whichever genre is speaking to me in the moment, and I just run with it. Which I guess like just tying that back to pottery real quick too, like, you know, we always say that like the clay has a spirit and it knows what it wants to be, and we're really just helping it get to that final place, right? After we fire pottery, like the pottery is already known, like what it wants to be. And I think I go about my filmmaking in a very similar way, where I'm like, the story already knows where it wants to be, the spirit of the story. So all I need to do is just help get it there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I would say that about the exhibition too, that I think it knew its story and it got here in a really interesting way. You know, it kind of started off, you know, with some things that you really wanted to think about bringing people together and multi-generational learning. And then once we got into the really, you know, specifics about which artists would participate, it took this family mentorship model, and then it went into, oh well, what other kinds of mentorships form, you know, between artists and specifically in the Southwest and specifically in Native communities. What drew you to the different mediums that you work with?
You know, I just grew up loving art and theater, and for me it's just ideas, just tons and tons. I just have tons of ideas. And like we're already working on 25 and 26, our fashion collection.
Oh, yeah.
So as a matter of like forward, I'm always living kind of in the future now. And I'm like, I'll tell you about 26 in Milano. But in my mind, every idea has the optimal platform, right? Like I did some dentalium 3D cast silver earrings. And I tried my hand at jewelry, you know, but it was like a matter of, because I can direct and can like move things along logistically. And I had that idea and I made it happen, right? And I make it a reality. And, you know, silver detailing, it's really heavy. And I didn't think about that part, but it looked really cool, you know? And then film, and then the 3D, and then the new technology, you know, all very powerful mediums. And then also social media, because like, you know, back in the day, you'd have like the reception, like Earl would be in Aspen, Vale, even like people, if that was the only time you get to see it, that was when it was. Now it's like, okay, we hit like, you know, 50 million views on our platforms, you know, and it's like, so 50 million people saw Sky or saw my painting. So that being able to do the work, but then show the world, do the work, show the world. And then what was it? Used to be like 15 minutes of fame, now it's like 15 seconds. And then the news cycle used to be 24 hours, like 24-second news cycle. So it's always just like, if you don't catch it within like 3 seconds, that type of thing. But then, you know, painting, I tried my hand a little bit in clay. I gotta get back to that. And then, you know, fashion is really cool because then it kind of like branches out. And it can also reflect into like, you know, indigenous values as well. Like I'm doing a lot of dresses now in tencel, which is made out of wood pulp, like eucalyptus. And it's actually a material that like is fully, you know, sustainable.
Nice.
So using that platform to be like, hey, this is how we can do it, you know? So I don't know, a lot of mediums. Yep.
And Charine, thinking about what you were saying about the different roles that you're involved in with the productions, how do you think that's carrying you like into your next projects?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like there's like in the film world, there's just like so much to learn and so much to try to grasp. And for me, like, you know, as much like schooling as I've done and everything, it really takes like just being on the ground, like working with my crew, working with you know, my friends that are in the native film world too. And I think we're all like in this really interesting place right now where we're growing really, really fast. And I think it's really exciting. But I think if I didn't have that support system, like I think I might be a little more lost, honestly. You know, I feel like my Sundance Indigenous program, Native Film Family really like carried me through a lot of like really hard experiences too. And so, you know, I think it's like being a filmmaker is a lot about like how we express like our, you know, just these really crazy moments in life that are both like can be very tragic and sad and but also like super like thrilling and happy, you know. And I think just I really loved in your documentary, Dante, how you talked about that balance of like the storm moving through and then, you know, it goes away, or like, you know, when the burn scar, you know, there is life that comes after that. And I think that that's one of the more beautiful things about being storytelling, like, you know, being a storyteller across many mediums is like we get to have our hands in that, you know, we get to like really express ourselves and figure out how to move forward too. And maybe laugh in between.
Have fun.
And so I think we're at the end of our hour. Does anyone have any questions from the audience?
Well, I was wondering how old you both were when you started in the mediums that you're working in now.
Sure, I'll start. I think Native people growing up in indigenous community, like I was painting, drawing. I went to Indian market when I was like 6. You know, like it's kind of like in our blood. And there's different houses, like because I would stay up in Taos and okay, Wingate and all that, and different friends of my mom's. And there was the, you know, the potters and then the jeweler house. And then, so even at that house, I was helping get the fire going and the kiln, you know, so it's just a matter of, I think it's just part of me, you know, that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely resonate with your answer. I feel like it's, yeah, it's been a part of me. It's been a part of my family since before I was born, and hopefully will continue long after, you know, we're gone too.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for being here and everything you do.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Well, you're welcome. This project is really really meaningful, and I'm just glad that we can all come together and look at Southwest Arts and kind of what's coming up and reflect also on what's already happened. And want to thank the Millicent Rogers for hosting the exhibition and being a real integral part in making this project possible, and also for the sponsorship of the program series, also National Endowment for the Arts. And so we hope to see you in Taos, New Mexico artists around the kitchen table. The exhibition runs through January 23rd. So if you're in the area, please visit the Millicent Rogers Museum, and we'll see you next time.
Next program.
We're also going to be hosting one more kitchen table talk session, and that's going to be on Sunday, December 17th from 2 to 4 p.m. And so that is going to have a couple different topics. One is women supporting women in Native Arts mentorship in New Mexico. And then we're also going to be talking about a family of Nueva Mexicana women artists from the Taos Valley. So I hope you'll join us. Thanks again.